Hi, fellow sweet romance readers. I'm Jen Spencer, and this is Jen Spencer's 10-Minute Book Club. Hi, sweet romance fans. I'm Jen Spencer, and welcome to my book club today. Today, we are featuring Nancy Campbell Allen. She writes historical romances, specifically steampunk romances. And I have never read a steampunk, but I'm so excited to hear from her. You're going to hear all about her books today. If you make a comment or ask a question below in the comment section, you will be entered to win one of my books, Jesse and James, or one of Nancy Campbell Allen's books. We'll leave those comments open for 24 hours and then we will choose a winner. So please feel free to ask any question you want, make a comment. We're just so happy you're here. And now I want to introduce Nancy Campbell Allen. Hi, Nancy. Thank you so much for being here today.
Hi, my pleasure. So good to be here with you.
Oh, I am so excited to meet you and talk about your book, Steampunk. That's so interesting. But first, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we can talk about your books.
Okay. I live in Ogden, Utah. My husband is a school counselor. I have 3 children, 2 adult children and 1 almost 17-year-old. And I write full time. My degree was actually in elementary education. And I taught 4th grade for 2 years, and it was the hardest thing I had ever done in my life. So I decided, and I taught preschool for several years too, kind of here and there and off and on. So teaching has always been a big part of my life, but now I write full time, and I really have enjoyed this stage of life too. So. Yeah.
Oh, that's so great. My daughter's a teacher, and man, and my mom was a teacher. I grew up with her teaching, and it is the so hardest job in the world.
It is. It is. I thought parenting was the hardest. No, it's teaching.
It's teaching. Hardest, underappreciated job in the world.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Completely. Yeah.
Yes. Well, that's so great. So tell me about your books and how you got into writing. And
when my first daughter was just a baby, we lived in Atlanta for a short time, and I grew up mostly in Utah from the time I was about 9. And so I hadn't ever seen like Civil War plaques and all those cool things. And we would be driving down the road, and all of a sudden here was a little sign that said, "This skirmish happened here," or, this is where so-and-so was headquartered. And I found it just fascinating. And I had just read a romance novel, and it was a time travel romance novel. And I thought, I think I might, maybe I'll try that. New motherhood. I was kind of overwhelmed. I needed a little bit of an escape. So I wrote a time travel romance back to the Civil War. And then we ended up coming back to Utah. And my book was, I submitted it to a few publishers, and it ended up being published with Covenant Communications, and it was a great spot to land. I did 4 romances with them, and then I did a Civil War series called Faith of Our Fathers, and that came out in about 2001 for about 4 years. And so yeah, my first one, my very first little romance was published in 1999. Mm-hmm. And then after that I did a series and then have switched publishers and did the Steampunk series with Shadow Mountain and a couple of Regency romances, and now I'm doing Victorian. And so kind of my thread seems to be romance always, adventure, mystery, and usually historical, but sometimes contemporary. So it's kind of all over the place, but right now I am in the middle of a Victorian series, so it's been really fun.
Your romances now, are they part of, I know Shadow Mountain has that proper romance line. Yeah. Is that where all your romances fit?
Yeah, they are all part of that line. And as I mentioned, my first 2 were Regencies. My next 4 were the steampunk ones. And all that basically is just Victorian romances with like airships and ray guns and that sort of thing. It's kind of like like a Jules Verne approach to romance. And
I think of the Wild Wild West, the new one with
yes,
Will
yes,
Smith.
yes, yep, absolutely, yep. And so I did those four, and now we're just trying a little bit of a different, the same basic idea, but just just straight Victorian without all the fancy airships and ray guns. But I still have other ideas, and people have emailed me and asked about other steampunk characters in the series that haven't had their story yet. And so those are still on the back burner and a possibility at some point. So
Fun. Well, so tell us about this latest book. We're going to be giving away a copy.
it's called The Matchmaker's Lonely Heart. And it is the first of three. There's a trio of cousins, girls whose connection is that they are all part of the Hampton family. Amelie Hampton is her niece, and she works at this newspaper that Sally owns called the Marriage Gazette. And the three cousins work there, and they live together in a townhome in Bloomsbury, in a nice upper middle class kind of a life. And they're trying to be women of independent means and kind of carve their own path. It's about 1880. I'm forgetting the exact year we did it, maybe 1887, 85, 87. And so so the Marriage Gazette is this paper where people can write in and ask for advice. There's like an advice column, and sometimes people send in little notes of what's the word I'm looking for? Like a match.com, but it's, in the newspaper days.
Like a want ad, or that's not it either.
Yes, not a want ad. What is the word? You know what I mean? Yes.
Yeah.
So Amelie prides herself on being able to kind of choose who would go well with whom. And so she's kind of a little, de facto matchmaker. And she sets up one young woman with a gentleman, and she knows who the young woman is, but she doesn't know the gentleman's actual name. He goes by Mr. Dashing. And so she says, this, I think to this, this young woman, that I think this would be a good fit. And so as this couple decides to meet, and so Amelie wants to know if it's going to go well. And so she's kind of hiding behind a tree and watching their initial meeting. And she decides after, they meet and everything, I'll take off and go. And so what she doesn't realize is that when the gentleman gets there, she recognizes him as a man from her book club. There's a book group, and this is an actual book group name that I did some research on. It's called the Cheery Society Book Group. And it's so funny. So yeah, I guess you had to be cheery and be in a good book group.
She did.
Cheery Society. So she knows him from the Cheery Society book group, and she realizes, and he's, just handsome, and he is Mr. Dashing, and she's kind of been shyly admiring him for a while. He's a widower, and she's kind of surprised that he has put himself out on the market because he hasn't been widowed for very long. And so meanwhile, as she's watching them and then decides to leave, she doesn't realize that there is a Scotland Yard detective also watching the scene, because the man, Mr. Dashing, whose real name is Harold Radcliffe, is under suspicion of having a hand in his first wife's death. So our detective is watching him. Amelie is watching the young woman and making sure that they meet okay. And meanwhile, our detective is wondering why he thinks maybe she might have some involvement with Mr. Radcliffe, thinking, is she like setting him up? Is she providing victims or potential, suitors for this man or whatever? So that's how they meet, and he convinces her to introduce him at the book group so that he can be there and get to know Mr. Radcliffe better under the cover of just being an old family friend of Amelie's family. And so that's where the whole ball gets rolling, and hijinks ensue. And I always like to have like a mystery adventure arc to my books, as well as the romance. And so both kind of build and climb at the same time. And you're always guaranteed a happily ever after with my stuff. And it gets, Mr. Radcliffe eventually clues into the fact that there is something going on. And so then all of a sudden she becomes a target and she's in danger as well. So that's how that works.
That sounds so fun. I love that premise and everything about it. That's really cute.
Very, very fun.
So you said that's the first book?
Yes, that's the first of three. And right now I am finishing up the second cousin. Her name is Ava. And that one is called The Photographer's Handsome Beau. And that release date is also about this time next year. So
fun.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so great. So great. Well, thank you. Those sound like wonderful books. I am really excited to read them. I have just a couple of random questions.
Sure.
What is the worst movie you've ever seen that you think everybody should see?
Oh gosh. There's a new release that I actually love so much, and it's very funny, but it's very silly. And I tell everyone that I recommend it to that you have to go into it knowing that it's ridiculous.
Okay.
And it's called Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar. And it stars Kristen Wiig and Annie
Okay.
Romulo. Oh gosh, I forget her last name, but it is so funny. It is so funny. And
Barb and Star go to
Vista Del Mar.
Vista Del Mar. Okay.
It's these two best friends, and they are like middle-aged, and they wear their culottes, and they talk funny, and they go to Florida on a vacation, and it's so funny. But it's one of those that you absolutely have to know that going into it, that there's little redeeming value in this movie other than making me smile for a minute. So yeah, it's so funny.
That's so great. Yes. Okay. I'll look that one up.
Yes.
I love to laugh, especially if it's like, okay, I know this is dumb. It's supposed to be dumb,
Right.
and it's just pure entertainment and just pure fun.
You can allow it to be its dumb thing and not want it to be something that it's not.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love it. I've watched it multiple times.
Well, that is good. Okay. So last question is,
Okay.
if you're stranded on a desert island, would you rather have a lifetime supply of chocolate or toilet paper?
I would say toilet paper because I can't have dairy. So nowadays I can't have chocolate anymore. So there we go. And also toilet paper is like, if I could find a charcoal stick, I'd stick with some charcoal on the end of it. I could maybe write on it. And I love to write, and I always have to have paper and pen. So I could use the toilet paper for multiple purposes. I think that would be my choice.
Good point. Well, that is really, I've thought, if I'm stuck in some, foreign prison, that all I would need, well, I'd want toilet paper too, but all I would need is paper and pencil, unlimited, so I could just write while I'm sitting there.
Right. Yes. I think the worst thing would be stuck somewhere in solitary with nothing to write with.
Yes.
I mean, books, would be great, but I constantly have a pen, and you probably do the same thing. There's always a pen and paper close by, and I do all my work on my computer, but yeah, if I don't have a pen and paper, I get a little twitchy.
Yes.
So.
Me too. Well, that's great. That's a great answer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much, Nancy. This has been so much fun. And remember, if you want to find out more, you can look up above. I've put her social media links and links to her books. I've also earlier this week posted stuff, so you can go back and look at previous posts. Be sure to comment or ask a question. And remember, you'll be entered to win a copy of my book, Jesse and James, and also Nancy's new book, which is, now I have to look at it, The Matchmaker's Lonely Heart. I'm going to forget. Thank you so much for being here. We'll see you next week.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All righty. Bye-bye.